Yasodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Bijanavalabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Jamalabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya This is Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 3, Karma Yoga, text 11. Devan Bhavayatanena Te Deva Bhavayantuva Parasparam Bhavayanta Sreya Paramavapsyata Devan Bhavayatanena Te Deva Bhavayantuva Parasparam Bhavayanta Sreya Paramavapsyata Devam Bhavayatanena Te Deva Bhavayantuva Parasparam Bhavayanta Shreya Paramavapsyata Devan Bhavayatanena Te Deva Bhavayantuva Parasparam Bhavayanta Sreya Paramavapsyata Devan demigods Bhavayata having pleased Anena by sacrifice Te those Deva demigods Bhavayantu will please Va you Parasparam mutually Bhavayanta pleasing one another Sreya benediction Param the supreme Avapsyata you will achieve. Demigods being pleased by sacrifices will also please you. And thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. Purport. Shripapa. Demigods are empowered administrators of material affairs. The supply of air, light, water, and all other benedictions for maintaining the body and soul of every living entity is entrusted to the demigods, who are innumerable assistants in different parts of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their pleasures and displeasures are dependent on the performance of yagyas by the human being. Some of the yagyas are meant to satisfy particular demigods, but even in so doing, Lord Vishnu is worshipped in all yagyas as the chief beneficiary. It is stated also in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna himself is the beneficiary of all kinds of yagyas. Bhoktaram yatapasham. Therefore, ultimate satisfaction of the Yagyapati is the chief purpose of all yagyas. Therefore, ultimate satisfaction of the Yagyapati is the chief purpose of all yagyas. When these yagyas are perfectly performed, naturally the demigods in charge of the different departments of supply are pleased, and there is no scarcity in the supply of natural products. Performance of yagyas has many side benefits, ultimately leading to liberation from material bondage. By performance of yagyas, all activities become purified, as it is stated in the Vedas. Ahara Shuddhau, Sattva Shuddhi, Sattva Shuddhau, Dhruva Smriti, Smriti Labhe, Sarva Garanti Nam Vipra Moksha. By performance of yagya, one's eatables become sanctified. And by eating sanctified foodstuffs, one's very existence becomes purified. By the purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified. And when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation. And all these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness, the great necessity of present-day society. Om Jnanatimrandasya Jananjana Shalakya Chakshun Militamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Garamayam Dadati Svabharandadam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you all for tolerating me ahead of schedule. It's nice to be in the company of very nice Vaishnavas. Thank you very much for your association. Translation repeated. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus, by cooperation between men, prosperity will reign for all. So like the analogy that Maharaj was giving yesterday in class about this world being a machine, right? Just to reiterate one of the things he said, if you use the machine properly, you get the benefit. And if you don't, you might lose your hand, or your life, or whatever. So, yes, this world is made for a rectification program. Just like we have jails set up by the government. The jails are not run automatically. There's a government or a main person. It's one aspect of the government. Let's say you have a king, this government. You got a king who's in charge of all the departments, and one department is the prison department. And everybody that works in the prison, indirectly works for the king. So this material world is like that, Krishna being the Yagyapati, the Bhaktaram Yagatapasham Sarvalokam Maheshwaram Sirdam Sarvabhutam Nam Yatmam Shantamrichati. Person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material misery. So this person, Shri Krishna, he is the source of everything. And these demigods are like parts of his body in a sense, not literally. Parts. Demigods are universal, like workers in the government, in the jail cell. Jail cell just being one department amongst many departments. Samhita 544. Shrishti Sthiti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Rekha Icheva Bhuvanani Babharti Durga Ichan Rupam Apyasacha Ishtasesa Govindamani Purushantam Hambajami. Maya, the external energy of the Lord, is of the nature of the shadow of the potency, and is worshipped by people around the world as Durga, the creating, preserving, and destroying agency of this mundane world. This mundane world. This is not a nice place. It's a mundane place. Prisons are not designed to be nice places. It's a mundane place. There's no real happiness. It's a place for rectification. And that verse goes on to say, I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, by whose order Durga conducts herself. So it's important to note that this material world, the agency Durga behind this dimension, the prison house, is controlled and operated by Krishna. It's not independent, as the scientists say, that this is just happens by chance. We have Darwin's theory. Okay, there's some evolution, no problem, but the jiva inside the body is causing the evolution. I got a bug body now I'd like wings. It's not going on automatically. Krishna is in control of it. You want wings? All right. Now be a bug body with wings. Okay. It's not automatic. So God has to be in the picture. Otherwise you get this atheistic science program which doesn't add up when we pick it apart. Or you get something where God's in the picture, but this is not a prison. This is arrangement by God for you to enjoy, right? Were you raised with that, maybe? The Western world is kind of raised with this philosophy, even intertwined within big religions, that this is the God's world, but it's a gift from God for you to enjoy in. Like freely. And this also is a misunderstanding. No, it's a prison. It's a prison for rectification. Without that understanding, then one thinks that this is a place to enjoy. And what can you enjoy here? Here we are, we have these material bodies. So the material bodies are the cause of our suffering. Even though one's been awarded a material body for sense gratification, it's the cause of our suffering. Nice verses. Therefore, I don't think an intelligent person knowing this, will then continue in the acts of sense gratification, which will perpetually give one a material body, birth after birth. and the cause of our suffering. Especially when you get older, things start breaking down. You know, it's just a matter of time before some organ goes out. You know, what's it going to be? The heart, the liver, maybe kidney. You know, what's going to go out? It's just a matter of time. So what's there to enjoy? You know, foolish people might build a sandcastle on the beach, like the adult sees a child play with a sandcastle on the beach. And, you know, kids having a lot of fun, and then when the wave comes and washes it away, he all cries. This is childish play. To try to enjoy in this material world, accumulate or whatever, for so-called enjoyment. This is child mentality. But the adult mentality is going, inquiring into the absolute truth. If one does not inquire into the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and is subjected to the miseries arising from ignorance. Yeah. So, that's Bhagavad Gita 555. And it goes on to say, karma has its reactions. Either sinful or pious, still karma has its resultant actions. If one is engaged in any kind of karmic activity, wanting to enjoy in this prison, then one's mind is considered, is called karmatmakam, colored by fruits of desire. If one's mind is impure, consciousness is unclear. And as long as one is absorbed in fruit of activity, one has to accept a material body. So those that are inquiring into the spiritual values of life are realizing that this, we don't want to have, we want to get out of the prison. The purpose of the prison is to become free from the prison. And I mean, I think most Sankirtan devotees have been in jail. I've been in jail, you know. At least in some countries they put you in jail if you're doing God's work sometimes. And you know, when I was there, you have a variety of people. You have the people that you can tell have been rectified. They feel sorry for what they've done. They don't want to do it again. And they're just awaiting that court date to become free. But then you also have people going, complaining, you know, this is at the lunch table, you hear different conversations. And then you have the type of person that's complaining about that blinking government, man, that cop, he did this to me, and man, it wasn't my fault, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And you can just tell that this guy's not ready to get free from jail. He's blaming everybody, blaming the government for this and that. So similarly, seeing that this is a prison run by Krishna ultimately, but more indirectly run by demigods, or directly run by demigods, because Krishna is behind the whole thing. And 8.4, what did, no, 93 million demigods, it's quite a bit. So to think that's the right number. So try to please each one just does not make sense. But just as one can water the roots of a tree and the whole tree is benefited, or one can give food to the stomach and then all the senses become strong and set. Similarly, we can perform Sankirtan Yoga, which is what's recommended for today's age, to please Krishna, in this way all the demigods are pleased, just by this one activity. By chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This very simple activity of chanting the holy name of God. One cannot find a better activity to do. One cannot find a more meaningful thing to do. One cannot find a more nectarian thing to do. Even if one is selfish, okay, take selfishness to its ultimate degree. You take selfishness to the ultimate degree, one enters into Bhakti Yoga. By giving Krishna only pleasure, by becoming a pure devotee of the Lord, one derives the greatest benefit, personally. So, a win-win situation, very simple process to take up. We'd like to mention a little bit regarding, I'll pick through the purport now in verse. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. Even Jarasandha, even all these amazing demons, you know, some time ago, demons want to take this planet Earth, make it like a Death Star from which they could, you know, conquer the universe. So many living entities were coming down, very demonic ones taking birth. And for example, they would take birth as tigers, and because they knew if they take birth as a human and were to kill the sages, then they would get karma for their bad reaction. So they took birth as tigers and devoured sages and got away with it this way. So, you know, intelligent demons aren't always, you know, like maybe in the silly movies that we watched. I mean, some of them are very intelligent. Kamsa, Jarasandha, you know, what was his name? The one that the sages killed by sound vibration. They could make great philosophy. But like Jarasandha, he gave so much to the Brahmanas. He gave anything to the Brahmanas. And he knows by doing this you get power. Even in modern day, a little bit more modern day, Julius Caesar, he would go to a church, or whatever they called it back then, a synagogue, of this and of that. He would go there on a regular basis and give money. Why? Because he knows he gets power. Even if you read, you'll find the reading of, what is it? The Iliad and the Odyssey? Is that the name of the book? Iliad and the Odyssey? The famous classic, huge book, at least in the Western world. It's a humongous book. It's from way back when. Like, you know, Roman time perhaps, or a little bit thereafter. Even within that, you'll see a reference to demigod worship. So the major civilizations in the past, at least some of them, understood that we have to give to that which we're taking from. We're taking the sunlight, we're taking the water, we're taking all these things. And to just take and not give, obviously we are a thief. So in this book, there's one evidence where somebody's coming back from battle to his home, and he's a bloody mess and he's very thirsty. And, you know, usually people just offer them water or offer them juice or whatever right away. But he says, no, the person of the household says, no, first offer this to the servant. So even that is within that. So this is a natural system. People that are not too bewildered. What is it? 244. Bhoktaram yagatapasham sarvaloko maheshwam. No, sorry. And the minds are too absorbed in. Sorry, I'll get back to that one. They were too bewildered by material opulence and sense gratification, and resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. So in more simple, thank you. Yeah, so many civilizations in the past have recognized this principle. There's so many, like in the Native American culture. Prabhupada said Native American culture is the most akin culture to the Vedic culture. It's so, this is like an ancient civilization within the United States or Americas. And they perform all kinds of, you know, sacrifices. It's understanding that we don't want to be a thief. We want to prosper. Right? So the ultimate prosperity is, the Jambudvip residents say in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.18.9, Yasyasti Shrishti oh gosh, I think it's spaced out, oh Harab. Anyway, I forgot the Sanskrit, but the English translation is, may there be all, oh Swastiastu, may there be all good fortune in the material universe. So this is the natural inclination, may there be all good fortune. May all envious persons become satisfied, become pacified. May all living entities take to Bhakti Yoga. By doing so, they will think of each other's welfare and become peaceful. Therefore, I think best that we all engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Transcendent, Sri Krishna, and always remain in thoughts of Him. This is the ultimate sacrifice, Bhakti Yoga. So it should be recognized that just like there's a government program working here, even if you take away the Indian government, they shut down and it's just a free-for-all, you still have God's government going on, subtly happening, and there's reactions. You might shackled by sex desire, you might be experiencing some severe physical illness because of what we've done perhaps in the past, some penalty. So everybody wants to prosper and have no problems and their sojourn back home to Godhead. So this verse is making it clear that we need to do this intelligently, apply ourselves appropriately, perform action that pleases Krishna ultimately. And we see that where people follow such activity, there is so much more peace and prosperity in the world. Interesting to note, if you look at India, just geographically, the river system, it's so easy, things are coming off the Himalayas and flowing down into the ocean from various places. And you have an incredible river system that makes it so conducive for growing things very easily, as opposed to there's plenty of places in the United States. You got to get water from long ways away. And climate is conducive for walking outside and grabbing some bananas off the tree, or whatever, as opposed to in some of the cold climates. It's, I don't know if you could even survive. I guess the Eskimos survive somehow. But anyways, much more conducive, and Prabhupada made a comment, I've been told, or maybe I read it, where he said in New Vrindavan, which is a pretty cold climate in the United States, he says, yes, if you all take this very seriously, there'll be, mango trees growing, which can't grow there, but the climate would change. Like we see, and when Ramachandra was here, there was no death for those that didn't want it, not to mention disease or old age. There was no death. If you didn't want to die, you didn't have to die. Everything was like provided in great, profuse. I mean, when Krishna, in the Krishna book, what took place in the earth as far as prosperity and so forth was amazing. So this is just a byproduct of one proof. And I have a personal proof of this. Of course, I do experience this every day. But when I first joined, it was very clear to me. When I first joined, they put me to establish a farm, 7,000 feet up in New Mexico, with one or two other devotees. And it's just barren land. So I cleared the land, dig the trenches for the crops, and plant the seeds, and then the senior person in charge comes to the property, and I'm like, hey, I got to water the seeds. He's like, no, oh no, before that, he came first to the property, and we were kind of in anxiety, we got to work really hard to survive. It was my thinking, what I'm used to thinking. And he goes, just chill, this is chant Hare Krishna. So I'm like, what's this going to do? We got to work hard. So he just starts chanting, so I'm like, new bhakta, okay, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari. And we chant for a little while. And all of a sudden this huge storm comes. It's so huge that it floods the land with this river, flooded, and flooded the land where we're going to make the crop with all these nice minerals in the ocean from the mountain. And then he leaves, and then we go make the fields and everything, and then we plant the seeds. Then he comes back, and I'm like in anxiety. I got to water the seeds. I got to survive. He says, no. You just chant Hare Krishna. Oh God, okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Pretty soon there's a cloud coming over. Hare Krishna. I mean, I saw this with my very eyes. I'm like, this is going to happen for a second time. No way. And this wasn't a flood to wash everything away. It was just like, whoosh. That's it. Seriously. I experienced this. I was just like, completely blown away that this actually works. Yeah. So anyways, there's some personal proof that I experienced seeing this work, and of course we experience it in our day-to-day life as we chant Hare Krishna. And maybe there's been times when you select on your sadhana, and just the opposite starts happening, right? So let me put to this purport. Demigods are empowered administrators of material affairs. The supply of air, light, water, and other benedictions for maintaining the body and soul of every living entity is entrusted to the demigods, who are innumerable assistants in different parts of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their pleasures and displeasures are dependent on the performance of yagas by the human being. So, some of the yagas are meant to satisfy particular demigods, but even in so doing, Lord Vishnu is worshipped in all yagas as the chief beneficiary. It is stated also in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna himself is the beneficiary of all kinds of yagas. Bhaktaram yagatapasam. Therefore, ultimate satisfaction of the yagapati is the chief purpose of all yagas. When these yagas are perfectly performed, naturally the demigods in charge of the different departments of supply are pleased, and there is no scarcity in the supply of natural products. Now, Prabhupada emphasized simple living and high thinking, and we see Vedic culture was so opulent based off of natural products. Prabhupada makes the comment, to see somebody with a gold bracelet today, everybody's got like plastic bangles, But in the past, we read about the cows being decorated with gold jewelry or whatever we call that, plating, and cloth, and so much. Anyway, we all have read that stuff. So, but the factory program, we can't eat the bolts, and it's not making anybody really happy. Maybe a few people become very wealthy, but the masses get seriously problems. For example, my father was an electrical engineer. Where he worked, the company tried to see when you work with that kind of work, the byproduct of all that electronic stuff is extremely poisonous, and you have to pay an enormous amount of money to have it properly discarded in a special situation. But this is Kali Yuga. To save money, they would dump it in a well, and the everybody lives off well water. There's no rivers in that town. It's a big city, 1 million people. So the entire the well water basin all got severely contaminated, and probably just was not only him. Not him, but that company. But we see the result of this, to save, $200,000 discarding it appropriately, every person has to buy a gallon of water at $1 a gallon, every other day. So for them saving 200,000 probably cost at least $1 billion for the inhabitants of that city over the course of 20 years or something like that. So, few might so-called succeed, but the universal government, Krishna's government, you know, there's you can't get away with anything. So recognizing that we are dependent on Krishna. Actually, Prabhupada said the reason why we do Sankirtan, he said exactly these words, is to realize we're dependent on Krishna. That's why we do Sankirtan, to realize we're dependent on Krishna. To realize there's no independence here. We're always controlled. We have free will to be controlled by Krishna's internal energy or external energy. And that's the only thing we have free will about. But everything else is we're controlled. So, continuing with the purport. Performance of yagas has many side benefits, ultimately leading to liberation from material bondage. By performance of yagas, all activities become purified, as it is stated in the Vedas. Ahashara sattva sudao dhruva smriti smriti labhe sarvagrantinam vipam moksha. By performance of yagya, one's eatables become sanctified, right? I guess we got in a couple verses, yagya shantom chante savakilbasa bhumjate te tugahapa yebachatmam karna. Devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they offered food first for sacrifice. Those who prepare food for personal sense gratification verily eat only sin. So, of course, devotees only accept prasadam. Because to take without offering, it's like to take without giving one is a thief. So even with eating, it's a basic principle within Vaishnava lifestyle. By performance of yaga, one's eatables become sanctified. So, you know, we are what we eat, right? If you eat only Krishna prasadam, your body becomes spiritualized. Can become free from diseases. So many benefits. And here Prabhupada is saying other benefits. By purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified. What's the name of that? I can't remember. Maybe it's Medasa. I don't know. Prabhupada describes that actually the brain becomes developed, and maybe he's referring to like a higher level of a brain. Well, he doesn't say that people don't even have brains. I'm assuming that he's meaning this, by taking prasadam, actually this substance grows, that he's describing, to where we can actually think of these higher principles. And this is what's described here as well. And when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation. And all these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness, the great necessity of present-day society. So, obviously, without Krishna consciousness, we remain in Maya consciousness. And we see there's so many fine, subtle things going on with this Krishna consciousness. For example, the result of, I don't know if it's appropriate to say here, but no, let's just say meat eating. We won't mention what kind of meat eating. You know, breaking this regular principle. What takes place is one cannot realize God. Prabhupada writes, or spoken, it was written, you know, one cannot, as Prabhupada says, one cannot realize God by sinning. So this is a simple activity, right? Like in the days when the Muslims, well, let me put it this way. This is actually in the far history books with propagating Christianity. I think it's Iceland. There's a statue, I think I'm correct on that. There's a statue of what a person is considered a saint. So this so-called saint in spreading of Christianity, they knew that, you know, as long as you followed those regular principles, they couldn't control you. So, if you were a non-meat eater and they couldn't control you, then they would use that as an example. This is in the history books, and they would bring you into the middle of the open area where everybody hangs out, And if you refuse to eat meat, because once you eat meat, you can be controlled by then they would put a funnel, a metal funnel. They would light it, make it hot, put some milk in it, and take a poisonous viper. You don't want to eat meat? All right. And they'll put the poisonous viper in the hot funnel. It doesn't want to burn himself to death. So the viper goes inside into the stomach and eats himself out. And the person is killed in this way. So that person is considered a saint by propagating Christianity in this way. And it's not the real Christianity, of course. But anyway, rough situation back then in propagating Christianity. But they knew that if you could eat meat, they could control you. Right? In the partition days, Muslim and Hindu riots, Prabhupada writes that meat, and I won't mention which kind, will be forced into the Hindus' mouths. So, I mean, so many things like this have gone on. And so there's great problems take place when we break regular principles. So that's just an example of the subtle aspects. Prabhupada says, civilization, the people, humans, are as happy as the cows are. Now, if you just say that to somebody in America, they'd laugh and just think you're completely nuts. But as we take the practice and enter into this more subtle dimension of purification, we can actually see the reality of the situation. We're as happy as the cows are. There's so many subtle things with that cow. And if we treat mother nicely, you get one result. And if you treat mother not nicely, you get a completely different result. There's actually a story in Vrindavan here that, you get 1,000 times the reaction here. And one person who's American didn't understand. He was hungry, decided to eat a particular animal. I won't mention what kind, but we can kind of assume. And the villagers murdered him. They took pickaxes and killed him. So, here in Vrindavan. So, sample of, what will happen if we use this machine of this material universe properly. We get one result, and improperly we get a different result. So it behooves us to take time out to gain knowledge, share that knowledge with others, so people have an opportunity. This is like the user's manual, a very, very beneficial machine, but the machine can be very, very dangerous if we misuse it. I'll stop here and open up for questions. Any comments or questions? Sorry if maybe it was inappropriate regarding the discussion of that topic regarding mother cow. Oh, Krishna. Any comments or questions? Yes, Guru. Oh. Oh, yeah.
Are you trying to establish some form community or is already something done?
How do we establish it?
This form community that Prabhupada to show the whole world.
It's a little loud to the fan, sorry. I can hear you.
I see that Prabhupada wanted to show this, how to show the whole world, how to become a cow, every second, and man, and those things. farms, they separately
Yeah, Prabhu here is talking about how Prabhupada said 50% of his work is undone, and he's sharing the importance of farm communities, and he's wondering, are there any farm communities in America or whatever? Well, no, not self-sufficient farms and very little farming. There's many attempts, many have failed, and there's many that started as that and turned into, you know, different things. As far as I can think of, I can't think of one that's really functioning. And it seems to be the theme but there's been, with this corona thing and the radical amount of unemployment, Prabhupada said that we need these farms because in the future unemployment will become so high that people will come to us at the farms, and by the, I don't know how many, I thought he said like millions, but like an enormous amount of people will join our farms, like by the, you know, many's. So, and he says we must accept them and we must engage them in work, and this way they will gradually take to Krishna consciousness. So that's what's going on all over the world, and this may be an impetus for us to, you know, finally start something. Not to mention, it's just becoming more and more the most practical thing to do. You know, you see the devotees aren't really so happy if they're working, you know, a job, and, you know, on Sundays they go to the temple or whatever. They're not as happy as they would be if they went to a farm and lived a more simple life and had more time to practice Krishna consciousness. So, I mean, the general theme is if you want to preach, okay, go ahead into the city, wherever the people are, and preach away. But if you're not, better to live on the farm. And to show a good example. You know, this simple living and high thinking. Right? The farm, you don't have to work so hard. You have time to chant, so many other things, live a more natural life. People are happy. I don't know if that helped to answer your question or your concern. Is that okay? What? Yeah. Yeah, getting a, I mean, it sounds, we were going to do it in New Mexico, but, you know, I don't know what happened to that, honestly. I wasn't involved in the management. It was just a bhakta doing whatever, doing yes, master. Prabhuji, you have a great many years of wisdom and knowledge base, strict adherence, staunch spiritual life. Any words of wisdom you could bless our hearts with? All right. See if I can we, can we think of any past, since we have just a little bit of time left, can anybody think of a pastime in relation with this verse and purport? You know, I think of Jarasandha, you know, he worked really hard at following these principles, you know, giving to the brahmanas. So many, Ravana was a great Lord Shiva, right? Pleasing the demigod very much. And so many things, like so many examples of this, where they prospered like anything. Incredible prosperity by following these basic principles, but they didn't want Krishna in the picture. So eventually that program gets messed up, as we read about the divine demoniac cultures. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride. I mean, they get strong. They can get very strong by following this basic principle. Like Caesar, very powerful. Pride, but one thinks one doesn't get the ultimate result. This is humility. We need to be humble to re-enter the kingdom of God. So they become proud. I am the owner of this. This is mine. This aham mameti becomes manifest. They think in terms of I and mine. You know, this contamination. If one worships the Krishna, then one gets free from this I and my mentality, that binding false ego that binds us to this material world. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, and become angry very quickly when they're offended. Whereas devotee, you know, worshipping Krishna, by doing all this, but keeping Krishna the center, you know, Trinadapi Sanchana, Taropi Suhisnana, you know, following this basic principle, wearing this around her neck, more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, giving all respect unto others, and not expecting and giving up false prestige. One doesn't have any false prestige. One at least shouldn't, or goes away at least. You know, what do we have you falsely proud about? Huh? I mean, we're fool number one. We left the spiritual world to try to enjoy separate from Krishna. Now we're trying to go back and become Krishna conscious. I mean, become Krishna conscious. And, you know, becoming free from anger, lust, the dictations of the senses, the mind, the senses, and the genitals, you know, and qualified to make disciples all over the world and bring other people back home. And the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas devotees are developing pure love for Krishna. You know, demons are situated, Krishna is situated in their own bodies and the bodies of others, and blasphemy against the real religion. Just like, who is Prithu's, I guess we call him father, I forgot his name, who was so demoniac that the Brahmanas killed him. King Vena, there we go. King Vena, you know, applied this program very much, but then he shifted. I mean, I couldn't say applied it so well, but the atheistic structure is, okay, yeah, you have to give to God, and then you can prosper, but now I am God. And if I am God, then you all have to now serve me, and by serving me. So it's like twisted mentality. And we see so many personalities that we just had, really, it sounds wonderful, but it's twisted. Just a little bit. So, those in the mode of ignorance, they see, you know, what is true is non-truth, and what is untruth is truth. So, we see this in the West, because so many people with varieties of religion are eating meat. They think this is from the devil. They really do. So many of them, and they'll right out say it. And they think that their cheating process is the real truth, real religion. Even though it doesn't add up, it does not add up. The saints don't say it. The gurus don't say it. Even if you pick apart their scriptures, it doesn't say it. But they accept. One atheist said that people in religions today are not seeking truth, they're seeking comfort. So, by you know, but inquiring into the absolute truth, following the real process, the Prabhupada so, you know, painstakingly gave us, we can have a complete understanding of very, very fine details as to how to awaken Krishna Prema within the heart. You know, down not stepping over that flower petal that's been offered to Krishna, circumambulating the temple 3 times a day at a minimum, or the deities 3 times a day. And so many fine, fine details. And of course the gross things, yeah, don't eat the living entities, don't eat your mother, things of this nature. So it's all here. We just need to take advantage of it and read it. And by taking to it, compassion is awakened in the heart, and we want to share it with others because we know we got the right stuff. Just as a hungry person eats food, becomes satisfied and knows that his body is being nourished, one becomes aware. Or as Lord Chaitanya or Thomas Jefferson, a famous president, was it Jefferson? Yeah, I think so. They both use the same word. When things become, what is the right word that is used by Lord Chaitanya? Self-evident. He used the word, things become self-evident. So many atheists have this program, they'll just say, well, you're just imagining this. And a good response to that, I learned this from H.D. Goswami, is, we spoke a little bit about material atheistic scientists. Well, you just imagine, you're just making up this God thing for your comfort. You can't prove it. Well, you can just retort by saying, well, you can't prove that I exist outside of your head. You can't prove that this entire world, including me, exists outside of your head. But you are doing the exact same thing. You can't prove that, but it's become self-evident to you that the world exists outside of your head. So similarly, if one does your God research and apply it properly, it becomes self-evident that God exists, that certain things are absolutely true. And that helps bring it to a platform from which they can begin to respect, because there's a common platform of self-evidence. I'll stop there, 6:30, unless there's any more comments or questions. Jai Prabhupada, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Baba, Go Premanandi,